Okay, so I've been really pushing on very heavily with this guy, as you can see. Looking very much the part. So we've installed the harnesses. To be honest, they are literally just a touch of super glue and we pop them down in place and everything else, as you can see down on here. Nothing really to it, just popping them in. They're pretty good. What I do suggest is, though, obviously, smallest amount of super glue, just a tiny drop, then put it in, let that dry, then come back with a little bit more super glue and then pop it over the top. The thing is, what you don't want to do is literally come in, though, with kickers and stuff, because otherwise that'll frost it and it'll have like a white chalky look to it around it. That way it just stands out and it's horrible. But if you let it dry naturally, you'll have no problems at all. Now, some of this has been glued, some of this hasn't, so it's sort of mocked up. The other thing as well, you might notice over here on the dial, we've actually gone through and used an aftermarket one for the little radar scope down on here. So we've popped that little guy in there like that, no problems at all. And then just the usual thing, to give it a nice glossy look over the top, we've gone down and given it a coat of clear right the way over it, just to make it really nice. These harnesses, again, they're lying just a little bit loose here at the moment. It needs a wash and things like that. So as you can see, we've also put down as well the little decals on there, very straightforward, Tamiya decals, pretty nice as always, and we've popped in a few of the little things like a fire extinguisher, stuff like that. Okay, so what we need to do now is just to generally go round and liven it up just a little bit all the way over it. So what I'm going to do is dry brush it, tiny little bit of sort of grey colour, a very light grey, just to give that effect of reflection on a surface. We don't want to go through with silvers, and that would be too strong, but what we can do is do a two-tone type of effect on this, which I think will work very nicely. So for that, what we're going to do is we'll just grab a little bit of XF19, usual thing, just like this. All right, give it a bit of a shake. Okay, now again, I like to do it all in situ, so then that way it just, everything blends in together and looks quite nice. Now again, we're not going to need a huge brush for this, we just want a sort of medium size type of brush, something like this. All right, so usual thing, we'll fill up our paintbrush, a couple of coats, down onto the towel, give it a good rub, get rid of pretty much all of it. So by continuously putting a bit on, what you're doing is absorbing it all into the bristles. It just makes it last a little bit longer. Okay, so we can do it just like that. And then, as you can see, some of this has got bits on. It's going to be a little bit tricky for you to try and see at the same time. All right, so what we're going to do is just very lightly just rub this around. And all we're trying to do is just cause a little bit of greyness, little bits on the floor, for instance, so we can just rub the floor, and then we're just popping around everywhere just to go through. So we're going over like the fire extinguisher here. We've still got to do the top side and things like that, but generally it's just to add a little bit of depth. Okay, so just grab a little bit more. So we're using acrylic, but if you wanted to, you could use oils. Okay, but this is just to give a slightly shined effect to everything. Okay, so some of this has had an oil wash already just behind the seats and things like that, just so we could get in there, but this is just to bring it all around. But by using grey, it will just lighten it up, so you can do the seats as well. Okay, and you can go over the harnesses. Okay, it's all just to reinforce that look of wear and just that general light scuffing without actually having to go round. Okay, and physically put things in. So again, I'm just going to have a little bit here. Okay, but by using a smaller brush like this, we can just get into some of these little areas. And again, it's more akin to wearing down, but as we rub it over here, hopefully you can see it on this top area, it just wears it lightly, and then what happens is when we come in with with a wash, it should blend it all together. So these little armrests up here, just go those, remember coming in from all the angles so it has all that worn look. A little bit over the seats, a little bit over the belt, so you're catching that edge of the belt, it just reinforces that it's got a crease on it. Okay, and then down in here, over this boot area and various things. And really all you're doing is just adding a highlight. This is just highlights, and in a minute we'll be coming in with oils, and that will be your low light. Okay, so you're just going to have heavy contrast, which makes things just pop out a little bit more. Okay, so I'm just going to pop in here, just around on these areas. Use the phone. Okay, so just that. Okay, and then we're just going to come back in the backs here. We're not going to see anything down the back or anything else, so it is just a case of just trying to pop round into these areas. We are going to see around the back here, so we're just going to go over these and everywhere around like that. Okay, so pretty much everywhere. I've done a few other areas, as we know. Then we're just going to come in with this. So this is our brush, and as you can see, it's still got a little bit of silver on it. This is just where we actually use our buffable paints. Okay, and then we can go in and just lightly go over the floor area with this. Now the whole point of using this, and hopefully you'll be able to see it because it's a little bit tricky to see, but this will give an edge, but also it's going to give that effect of weight. Now it sounds funny, I know, it sounds odd to me the first time I told myself it, but the thing is, what it actually does is give a slight metallic look to objects, and that way it just takes away that look of it being just flat. Okay, it gives it a bit of shine, so it just gives it a little bit of weight. So you can even use it just on the edges of seats and cushions. It's a very light, so that way it's just going to reflect rather than anything else. So again, just on this plate on the top, just down on all these sections. And again, on the control stick, we've already done dry brushing on these areas, but this is more of a general one to push it all in there. All on these areas we're going to see. Obviously we've got this will be the hatch just down in here where they're going to come up. Okay, so you just want to make sure edges are done. Okay, this floor area down at the back is going to be seen. This guy needs to push down. Okay, and then we can just go around the front here. And then if it's too shiny, it's not a problem, because what's going to happen is we're actually going to come in and we're going to put a wash over this in a moment, which will dull everything down again. Okay, so it is just that two-stage effect. So again, we're going to go over the cushions. So you think to yourself, yeah, metallic wouldn't work over a cushion, but don't forget this is a nice dark colour. It's not going to be too strong. Okay, and it just goes over it like that. Alright, so nice, straightforward. We'll just do the floor here, because the thing is we've got wiring and stuff to come in, and we won't be able to brush around in there after we've done all of that. So quick rub around everywhere on here, those edges. And then we've just got to do the back in this. Okay, quick rub around some of these areas, these ones down the back we've gone in. Okay, so that is it, just like that. Next up we can come in actually with a little bit of the oil wash. So as always, we'll be using the Abtai Lug 502 oils. Literally this is the smoke colour, it's my favourite one. And we'll be using a tiny bit of enamel thinners. So for this we're using a little bit of X20. And we're only going to need literally drops. Okay, so we're just going to go a couple of drops in there like that. And we're going to use our choose this brush. So we're just going to grab a little brush full just like this, and we're just going to make up a simple little pin wash. The great thing about using enamels, obviously it's not going to affect anything we've got down here before, and the other thing, it will dry nice and smooth, hopefully with no tide marks or anything else like that. Alright, so that's that. Okay, let's put the lid of this on. Okay, so we'll start at the back here. Okay, always keep mixing it in the dish as well, this stuff will separate. Okay, and then all we're going to do is just going to brush this around. Obviously not on the clear parts, but it will self level and take care of all its own stuff. So we're just making sure we're coming around. That's all good, just a little bit around the dials. Again, it will dry back nicely. As I say, we've already done a little bit around here, so we're just adding a little bit further just to really make it go. We're going right over the top of these harnesses. We're going to go right over the top of the seats. The seats will gloss up slightly as well. Okay, down in here, underneath all these areas on that fire extinguisher, all around on the seat, making sure you pretty much cover everywhere. Okay. Okay, and just naturally let it pull around and go into all the areas, and again you can probably see it's starting to separate, so a good old mix. Okay, just down there on the floor areas. Okay, on these seat edges, on the seat cushions, over the harnesses, just to dirty those in as well. Over that cushion, and just make sure it's nice and smooth, so when it dries smooth as well. Okay, and then the floor, and again the floor, just make it nice and smooth, just so it goes around and clings to everything. Okay, and the equipment. Okay, this back wall, this sort of firewall type area between the front and back, right over it. Okay, just spreading it around generally, pushing it in as we go, and just going over. And what happens as well is when you put, as you can see, the enamel thinners down on the harnesses, you see how it all just naturally sags and goes in. So you can push it around, soak those, and then they'll just, as this one's doing, you can see quite nicely here at the back how it's sort of wrinkling up on its own and just hanging nicely. That works really, really well. Okay, so again we're just going to come over this side, and hopefully we've got enough just to get in here. But being enamels, you can sort of drag this around all over. Okay, so the last place to do is, hopefully we've got enough just for this. We can just pop it around on the floor, just down in here, making sure we're all totally covered. And there we go, that is it. Again, if it's too much, you can come back in, you can thin it down with a little bit of thinners. You can come in and you can actually wipe it away with a cotton pad, anything else you like, just like that. But that is our system done. And again, with these little yellow spots which we put on, which are decals, okay, they're sat on there now. We've got one that looks like it's got a little air thing in it or something. Nope, that's not supposed to be there. Okay, we'll just give it a little bit of a nudge, but the enamels will help settle those down as well. Okay, so all we've got to do is a couple of little bits of bright silver, got a little bit down here on the fire extinguisher, alright, things like that, just to take care of it. But that really completes our cockpit area done. Now if it does need a second coat of wash, we'll give it a second one, but I think that's going to be roughly about what we need for the moment. Alright, so we're going to leave it like that, we're going to let that dry. Okay, once it's dry, what we can actually do is then have a further look round. You can re-dry brush it if you want to, add some more little details, things like that, but that's the basics of that one totally done. Over here, we've also painted the inside colour of the actual interior green, and then obviously we can line up, we've got throttles, various things, because as you can imagine, what's going to happen is this is going to come along something like, I don't imagine how this goes in here, is going to come in here something like this. So we've got all the equipment that's got to go on this side as well. Alright, so what we're going to do, leave that to one side and we'll get going on that. Okay, so pushing along, we're now going to be working on the sort of nose gun system. We've got the 4 Browning 303 machine guns fitted in the nose, and obviously got the larger cannons fitted underneath the sort of belly of the Mosquito. In both cases we've gone for an aftermarket look, purely because I just think they're a focal point. It's one of those things, we're going to have it undone, it's all going to be on show, so we want to show off some of that beautiful work in there. So down in here you can see we've actually installed, although we haven't painted it yet, this is a resin replacement bar system which the actual guns are going to hold on to and hopefully line up with, as long as we've got them all lined up correctly. Okay, they fit in. Now these are a little bit of a funny fit how these go in. You want to make sure they're exactly the same widths across each side. Otherwise what's going to happen is you're going to end up with a bit of a fit issue and going to have to end up sanding these back. My worry would be sanding this is because it's obviously resin, that you could end up actually snapping them off and everything else. Now the parts we're actually using is, this up, we're actually using this. Okay, so the part number of this is 632077, and basically what it is, it's that rear bulkhead that we fitted in already with a little bit of wiring work. Admittedly there's a little bit underneath here we're not going to bother with because it's just too much. Plenty of photo etch bits, but some beautiful work down in these areas. And of course we've got some of the areas which are a little bit of an upgrade to the kit ones in the nose system as well, okay, in like that. The other thing as well we're using, which are these, we're actually using some master barrels. Now this is for the Mosquito, and again it has the full barrels down on here for the actual 303s, and then we've just got the actual the tips of the barrels, if you like, hollowed out brass ones down there like that for the cannons underneath. I think they're actually 20mm cannons underneath, I think they are. Something else, and to be honest there's a couple of other little bits on there for a little bit later on during the build. Now the great thing with these are, if we get some of these out we can show you down here, because I do love, and I am a bit of a sucker for aftermarket barrels, purely because one, barrels are one of those things where they just, you know, they have all the potential of being very nice, but sometimes you're often let down just by some of the look. And resin, although it's very good, has its limitations what it can do. So resin tends to, I always say, be a little bit more detailed than perhaps what you would find with something just out of the box. So obviously, I can just squeeze these little guys out, trying to get these without them flying off into the distance. Okay, there we go, that's it. So the thing is, if you're going to go with like the kit ones, they're absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with that at all. They are very nicely done parts. When you move up obviously into resin, obviously you get a little bit more detail. It tends to be a little bit more crispness and everything else. And as you can see, this is the resin version done just like this. Okay, now these are actually very nice, no problem at all. We've got a little bit of photo etch to go on the back, things like that, a little bit of wiring, and we would be good. And to be honest, the barrels aren't too bad, but really, they're just not exactly anything special, okay? So this is where these come in. These are multiple parts. So as you can see, we've got here the shroud, the sort of heat shroud around the barrel, which is actually all been completely drilled out, so it's completely see-through. We've also got the barrel itself, which is just a gorgeous piece, full drilled depth down into there for the 20mm. And again, you know, the camera is never going to show the details that this actually is. I don't know how well, perhaps we may be able to get a little bit closer here, but you might be able to see it's got all the different parts on there, and they are absolutely stunning. Okay, so what you do, you take the outer part, you just slide it over, and then you feel it. If it doesn't go down very easily, turn it round. They do have a left and a right, or a front and a back. There we go, that one goes down, and then what happens is it will click over this end little part just down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a smidge of super glue, and again, this is one of those things, it doesn't take much, and that will be enough to hold that guy in position. So we just repeat that on this side, and we can make up the barrels just like this, and again that's going to go down quite nicely onto the end. So again, we'll just take a little bit of super glue. So it doesn't have to do tons of it. It's not structure or anything. It's just to hold it and it stops it slipping around. Okay. Now the thing is with this one, as you can see, we've already got this one gun is completely finished. Absolutely looking gorgeous. Okay, and that is definitely an improvement over the standard one, just like that. Okay. Now they have got different lengths and different areas for these. So actually, what you need to do is cut them back for the correct one. So you got two to the left, two to the right. Okay, so I'm just making sure we have got our lefts and rights the way they feed. So this will be the slightly shorter one. So what happens is this guy over here is a longer barrel. So actually, as you can see, it's got a very long front part of the barrel here, and you've got a shorter one for the side one. So obviously the two in the middle have had the longer shroud, and then obviously the one at the back, the ones to the sides have the shorter one, just like that. Okay, now this is a gun for the other side. Let's get the guns for this side. Okay, that's for the other side as well. So that's two guns for the other side. And what have we done with the fourth gun, the third gun even? We had it here a second ago. Here it is. So what we actually do, we'll show you on here. Got a break just down the back here, and it's simple as coming in with your snips, trying to cut it level and just snip it off, and then you can sand it back. Okay, so just square it in and make sure it's all square, so when you put the shroud onto it in a moment, it's fine. And then, to be honest, the way I did it was, we just take this one's the shorter little bit of the shroud. Okay, so what we do, we just grab the back part and then we dollop this bit in, a bit of super glue that's been going off just a little while. Okay, because it's been going off a little while, it should be a little bit thicker, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to center that up and make sure it's all in the correct position, and it is. So what we're going to do is grab a little bit of glue. This is a little bit of runny glue. I'm just going to pop a little bit in here, and like we were saying before, we're not actually going to put any kicker, anything else on that at all, because we want this to dry clear and natural, and if you don't put kicker on it, it will be fine. Okay, so that goes in there literally just like that. Okay, so no problems there. And then what we can actually do, we can take one of our barrels just like this. Okay, and then this little guy, we can put a little bit of glue just on the end, just like that. Okay, and then we'll just feed this into itself. Just make sure it's all good. And there we go. That one's on there and in place just like that, and that's 2 guns done. Okay, again, very straightforward, very nice, and I'll be honest with you, probably a fantastic upgrade. If you're going to do it this way, because these actually really do make, I think, a difference on this one. The kit ones, don't get me wrong, are very nice, and if you're doing this build completely out of the box, then obviously the kit ones would suffice, no problem at all. But if you just want that little bit of a refinement, a couple of little areas, I always say harnesses really nice, gun barrels are beautiful things as well. And just from an engineering point of view, you know me, I love the engineering side of it. I just love these little bits of metal. They are absolutely fantastic. So what we do, we'll paint and weather them up just as we do the entire gun in a moment and make our way through. So what I'm going to do, carry on, get the other gun barrels done, sort those out. Once they're in, we might have a little bit of a test fit, but what we will do is going to put all the photo etch and all the parts actually onto the ammo containers now, so they can be painted in one before they're installed. And then for weathering point of view, perhaps a little bit like chipping, some wearing, scuffing, washes, dry brushing, things like that, it can all be at that same rate, which then gives the effect that the guns have all been in situ together as we make themselves in. So I'll get those done, and then we'll come together and we'll install the lot. Okay, so we've been pushing on, doing a few little details, adding the photo etch. To be honest, it's small, it's fiddly, it's a pain. Okay, but we are actually, as you can see down here now. So guns are done. So what you've got is a little bit of photo etch just here at the rear end. Okay, and then hopefully you can see it. You get a little bit of a stock on the back as well, and then apparently this little bit of photo etch bends up. Okay, so that has it here. Now there is full wiring that you can do on this to actually wire the guns up and everything else. Are you going to see it down in there? Don't think so. So we'll probably avoid that one. But these are all done beautifully now. So we just bend up this little bit of photo etch at the back on all of these. Again, fiddly, but I think it's going to be well worth it. And to be honest, just the barrels alone are absolutely beautiful. Again, if you're thinking about, you know, is it worth it? I would probably say maybe not all the resin bits inside, but definitely the barrels. If you want to do it on a little bit of a budget, they are certainly well worth it. We've also gone around down the front here, you can probably see, and we've done them with some metal work. These apparently are silver, so we've done that, and also we've weathered up down the back here as well. So we just added a little bit of weathering around in there, just a little bit of dry brushing with some silver, just to give it weight and everything else. And again, the thing is, there is wiring that's supposed to go down the back here, but you're not going to see that either because the ammo chutes are all going to be down there and everything else like that. We've also got these, have actually got little straps which are actually going to be pull straps. So some of them I've done quite rounded, some of them we've done as if they're pulled up a little bit and everything else, but they are tiny little guys just like this. So all of that we can actually paint, I think, now in aluminium. We're going to do it quite a dull aluminium. This isn't going to be bright and silvery, so we're probably going to pull out like a dull aluminium colour spray all of this, and then the guns themselves, what we're actually going to do is give these a coat of dark iron, which we'll show you in a moment, just so they're all nice there. The ammo chutes as well, we've cleaned up those, no problem. We have got that sort of brass colour we're going to do down in the inside, but I think we can get away with painting that by hand, or certainly we'll give it a whirl, all right, to get that one done. So what we're going to do, move this over to the spray bay. These will just get a coat of dull aluminium right the way over it, and the chutes and everything else. Probably going to give the guns a coat of it as well to act as a primer, and then we'll hand paint dark iron onto the guns. Once those are done, we can actually start fitting them in there, getting them all in there and lined up and everything else like that. Okay, so just out the spray bay, and down on here, as you can see, oh, I got very nice colourful fingers. We have got the aluminium cans done. Dark iron for that one, to be honest, we actually used a drop of this. So this is AK 480 dark aluminium. Okay, nice colour. The great thing about like this one is a lot of the AK ones, like a lot of modern sort of, you know, manufactured metallic paint or metallizer paints, tend to be, from my point of view, too shiny. They're all going for this high gloss chrome finish and everything else like that, where actually what I'm looking for is a more realistic dulled aluminium, as if it's a little bit old, been worn, been knocked about a bit, and things like that. So actually that's why I like the darker aluminium colours. So what we've got down here as well, you can see we've got one of the guns. Let me grab some of the others, go over here, they should be drying now. We've actually sprayed these up using a good old friend of ours, which is one of my favourite paints of all time, to be honest, is the dark iron. Now the great thing with the dark iron is this is a buffable one, so it's your Mr. Metal Colour 214. It goes on, as you can see, when you spray it down on here, it looks pretty much black. Okay, solid black, no problem like that. But the thing is, when you take your brush, okay, and this brush here has had nothing but metallizers on it as well, so it's like metallizers on metallizers, and you give it a rub, you will see, apart from the barrel, because the metal is actually brushing off from it, but that's not so much of a problem, we can use that. But certainly down here on the resin parts, we can then polish this up, okay, which we've done many times before. But it's a really good way of dry brushing, but also it's just that thing of putting highlights and shadows in all in one without having to mess around. Okay, so if you do want a nice polished look, so perhaps this, for instance, the actual ammunition chute off the side here, you can actually polish it with your finger, or certainly with your brush, into a very high gloss metal look. Or, like some of these other areas, if you want to leave it a little bit more darker, you can, okay? But it gives you a very nice three-dimensional, again, when you're looking at it, catching it in certain lights, it looks highly reflective. Other lights, it doesn't look too much at all, okay? So what we're going to do is we're just going to actually dry brush all of these up. And what we're going to do is obviously clean up these metal barrels and all these areas just down in here, just by giving them a brush over with this brush and nothing else. And then they're ready to be fitted in. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the same brush, which has actually got all this metal fleck onto it, and we're going to polish the non-buffable stuff. So this stuff here is AK, it's not buffable, but if you go over this, you can actually highlight and give worn and weathered look to normal metal finishes, and it will just increase the look, increase the shine, okay, into these areas, perhaps where you weren't initially thinking that you would need any on there, and things like that. So that's the thing. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to buff all these up and go around here. At the same time, we'll take our brush like this and we'll just give this a light rub over everywhere, just to add a little bit more depth. Okay, and what we can start to do is actually get these fitted up. Also, we have done, they're all lying around here in various stages, but we've also done the same with the actual magazine feed going in. Now we're going to have to go in there with a little bit of thin brass just to give that look of actually shells in the chute, so to speak, as if they're being ready fed to the guns. And these return feed ones, these empty ones, we just need to polish them up a bit more, because the reality is they're aluminium, okay, so we want those to look a bit nicer. So you might pop in a little bit of hand painting just to brighten those up and make them look the part. So anyway, we'll get cleaned up as well, get that done, get cleaned up, and we get it installed.